Hello friends. So today we're going to talk about Apollodorus of Seleucia. He is also known as Apollodorus Aphilas. And what makes him famous in the history of philosophy is that he was a Stoic philosopher, and he was a pupil of Diogenes of Babylon, who himself was a pupil of Zeno of Citium, the founder of Stoicism. So Apollodorus was like the second-generation Stoic. And if you remember from my previous videos, the Stoics believed in living in accordance with nature and that the key to happiness was virtue. And so we're going to talk about how Apollodorus tried to put these principles into practice. And we're going to see some parallels with Epicurus and the Epicureans. Before we begin, if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. And also at the end of the video, there will be a quiz on the material covered in this video. If you answer all the questions correctly, you will get 100 points, and if you answer all the questions incorrectly, you will get 0 points. So let's start. Apollodorus was born in the city of Seleucia, which was located in Babylonia. That's why he was sometimes called Apollodorus of Seleucia or Apollodorus the Babylonian. And he lived between 244 and 172 BC. So he was an ancient Greek philosopher. But he was also cosmopolitan. His parents were from different parts of the Hellenistic world. His father was a Jew from Seleucia, but his mother was a Syrian from Bithynia. So his family seems to have been a bit of a mixed bag. When Apollodorus was very young, his father died, leaving them in a difficult financial situation. And so his mother had to travel around the Mediterranean doing business, and Apollodorus was sent to live with his grandmother in Athens. And it was there that he developed an interest in philosophy. When he was a young man, he moved to Athens and began studying philosophy under the renowned Stoic philosopher Cleanthes. Now Cleanthes was actually the second person after Zeno himself to head the Stoipoikal, which was the common meeting place of the Stoics where they discussed philosophy and taught their ideas. And so Apollodorus was one of many elite students that Cleanthes taught. The others being the historian Polybius and the philosopher Chrysippus. After studying under Cleanthes for a few years, Apollodorus then studied under Zeno's successor, Chrysippus, who was considered to be the most prolific of the Stoics and perhaps the most intelligent as well. Apollodorus probably studied under Chrysippus for over 10 years, learning everything about Stoic philosophy. And when Chrysippus died, Apollodorus succeeded him as the head of the Stoa. And so by this time, Apollodorus was already a very accomplished philosopher. He had studied under 3 of the greatest Stoic philosophers. He had been teaching philosophy for more than a decade, and now he was the leader of the Stoics. However, Apollodorus wasn't satisfied with just talking about Stoicism. He wanted to put its teachings into practice. And so he began to travel around the Mediterranean. First, he went to Athens and then to Rome, where he taught many important people, including the future Emperor Augustus. And then he traveled throughout the Roman Empire, visiting places such as Egypt and even the island of Sicily. It was during his travels that Apollodorus decided to write a book about Stoic philosophy. He wrote his own version of Stoic theology, as well as a commentary on the works of Homer. He also wrote a book about the nature of the universe, and another book about virtue. However, none of these books survive to this day. One story about Apollodorus that has survived to us comes from his travels in Athens. One day he was walking through the Agora, which was the main marketplace of Athens, when some people started to mock him and his ideas. They laughed at him and made fun of him, and some people even threw stones at him. But Apollodorus didn't get angry or try to defend himself. Instead, he calmly picked up the stones and put them in his pocket. And when the people asked him why he was doing this, he replied, "Because I don't want anyone to be able to hit me with something that I haven't examined." This story shows us that Apollodorus really tried to embody Stoic philosophy in his everyday life. He wasn't just a teacher or a writer. He was a practitioner of Stoicism. The next story I want to tell you about Apollodorus comes from his time in Rome. He was there at the same time as the philosopher Epicurus, the founder of Epicureanism. Now, although Epicurus and Apollodorus were rivals, they respected each other's ideas. In fact, Epicurus once wrote a letter to his friend thanking him for correcting some misunderstandings he had about Stoic philosophy. In the letter, Epicurus said, "I have derived no little advantage from your frankness in our discussion, and I have recognized many points which I had not properly apprehended before." This shows us that even though Epicurus and Apollodorus had different philosophical views, they were still able to learn from each other and respect each other's ideas. And speaking of Epicurus and Epicureanism, Apollodorus had a somewhat complicated relationship with both of these things. On the one hand, he was a rival of Epicurus, and so he spent much of his career trying to refute Epicureanism. However, on the other hand, there are many similarities between Stoicism and Epicureanism. Both philosophies were founded in the Hellenistic period. They both emphasized the importance of living a virtuous life and avoiding pain. And they both had a significant influence on Roman thought. And so Apollodorus may have seen some of the strengths of Epicureanism and realized that Stoicism could benefit from some of these ideas. We can see this in his writings, especially in his letter to his friend, the philosopher Balbus. In the letter, Apollodorus discusses the idea of living a life according to nature, and he uses an example from Epicurus to illustrate his point. He says Epicurus says that a bird that would keep flying even if it were fleeing or seeking something to eat would be acting contrary to its nature. So too, he who does not willingly endure what is necessary, but is led by fear, is not living according to nature. What I find interesting here is that Apollodorus doesn't just quote Epicurus, he defends the idea and explains why he thinks it's correct. And this shows us that Apollodorus was open to learning from his rivals and trying to improve his own philosophy. Although Apollodorus was a great philosopher and teacher, he didn't hold any official positions in the government. He was never a politician or a general or a king. However, he did have a lot of influence over the people he taught. He tutored many wealthy and powerful Romans, and he was even invited to give lectures to the Roman Senate. And so Apollodorus was able to make a living by teaching philosophy and traveling around the empire. He was never poor or hungry or without a place to sleep. And so Apollodorus was able to live a comfortable life while still following the Stoic ideal of not being attached to external things. In conclusion, Apollodorus of Seleucia was an important figure in the history of philosophy. He was a great teacher and mentor who helped to spread Stoic ideas throughout the Hellenistic and Roman worlds. He was also a philosopher who tried to put his beliefs into practice and live a life of virtue and happiness. Even though Apollodorus is not as well known as some of the other philosophers of his time such as Epicurus or Zeno, he was an important part of the development of Stoicism, and his ideas and life serve as an inspiration to us today. Now here is a quick quiz on the material covered in this video. Please write your answers in the comment section below. Question number 1. What was the name of Apollodorus' school? Question number 2. Who was Apollodorus' most famous student? Question number 3. What type of character was Apollodorus in the movie Gladiator? I hope you enjoyed this video and thank you for watching. Goodbye.